Just ahead on American Black Journal, I'm going to talk with some of the former hosts of this program as we celebrate our 50th anniversary on the air. We're going to take a look at the issues that have been important to the African American community over the last half century. Plus, a new podcast is flipping the script on reporting news in a Detroit neighborhood. Stay right there. American Black Journal starts now.
American Black Journal is funded by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first.
How does diversity bring energy to us all? At DTE Energy, we believe that it's the contributions of all that build great communities. As a company, we grow stronger by welcoming the unique perspectives of everyone. As community members, we support our state's broad culture and heritage. From working closely with women and minority-owned suppliers to embracing our local cultures, DTE Energy is powering diversity. The DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public Television. Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Ford has a long history of honoring the achievements of great men and women. We also recognize that honoring means ensuring their legacies are carried forward. 2018 marks the 50th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination. To continue his legacy, Ford is partnering with the King Center and encouraging everyone to perform 50 acts of kindness. Between now and August 28, go to mlk54.org and register your act of kindness. Add Ford in the group name, as Ford will recognize select actions from our Southeast Michigan community. Perform your simple act of kindness, and together we'll carry forward Dr. King's dream of creating a beloved community.
Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson. This year, we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of this program on Detroit Public Television. I am just the latest in a string of hosts who have brought you important interviews from an African American perspective. Today, I am pleased to have two of the former hosts here as my guests. Livonia Perriman hosted Detroit Black Journal and Detroit Black News in the 1970s, and Carl Edwards was a guest host and a frequent guest on the show in the late 1970s. It is a pleasure to have both of you here.
Truly our pleasure, my pleasure.
I feel like both of you could probably just scooch over into this seat and take back over the hosting roles, right?
Fine.
You would be better than I am, right?
Your season, Stephen.
That's right.
Your season now.
Time of the season.
Right.
Livonia, let's start with you. Talk about how you came to host the show and sort of what it was like in the early 70s. This is when the show was pretty new, when you got to sit in the host chair.
I was very honored to sit in the chair. I came behind, believe it or not, Mr. Tony Brown. Tony Brown was called
the original host,
host, and he was called to Washington, D.C., Howard University, to literally be the first chairman of the School of Communication at Howard University. Well, I saw success floating around in Tony Brown, and somebody evidently, I was teaching at the time in the public school, and I was one of the creators of one of the first programs for Black history in the public schools. I didn't know any better. You know, I knew there were people fighting me, but I didn't understand, but didn't listen to them. Right. And this actually happened. I was doing a show for the school system. And someone said, you know, you ought to be in television. Sound like a real...
You ought to be in pictures.
Yeah, right. And so I took them up on it. And I ended up here with such great people, such as George Martin and many others, right after Tony Brown.
Yeah. So talk about some of the things that you were talking about on the show. In the 1970s, and
well,
whether
this
you
was
see
early, and I'm
of
telling on myself in terms of age, but you know, this came right after the '67 riots I actually was on the air, and so that was, you know, it was burning in my heart to have a discussion, and the city was burning, or it was burning to find out where do we go from here. So the show was very integral because it allowed for people who needed a voice to have a voice about what was going on in the lives of people here in Detroit, Michigan. So Black Journal gave people the opportunity to come on the air and express where we were going to go from the '67 riots. So it was very significant, very important. And believe it or not, I don't know about the ratings because, you know, they don't do ratings, I believe, at that time on PBS. Or,
Right,
you
who
know,
knew, right?
Who knew? But I knew that there were many people who were very who were watching and were very pleased that they had an opportunity, or, you know, they were given an opportunity to have a voice.
Yeah. Well, there weren't a lot of opportunities for African Americans to appear on television on shows that they were maybe writing or producing or controlling what the news was.
In fact, there was only one.
So Channel 62, right?
Right. It was right here, and this is now before I was before 62.
You were before 62.
Right. So this was the only vehicle for people of color, African Americans, to be able to then express themselves. This was the only shop in town at that time.
Yeah. So, Carl, before we get to you, we have a clip of you appearing on the 20th anniversary show, so 30 years ago, of ABJ. Let's take a look at that.
Carl Edwards, you were also on the tape. See some old friends there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm struck by Sam Yet in 1971 approximately said that black people were obsolete and that the political economy of this country basically did not include black people in their plans for the future. The problems of drugs, crack cocaine, unemployment, poverty, homelessness, joblessness, all can be related to that. And I think we got to understand that in terms of as we look to the future. I'm sure and I hope that this program continues to be a forum where we air those views, the connection between political economy and the process of inequality that we experience.
That's pretty deep.
Yes.
For a guy just standing in the audience, you stand up and say that. It's really interesting to look at that clip and think about what was going on then and how appropriate what you're saying there could be right now in 2018.
Yes. Yes. You know, we've literally come full circle. This is my 43rd year as a trial lawyer in Michigan. And prior to becoming a trial lawyer, my first job at 23 years old was, believe it or not, I was the affirmative action director at the Automobile Club of Michigan, and my mission was to racially integrate the salaried ranks of the company. It was 1973 and 1974.
Wow.
And so you can see Detroit really was ground zero for us at the time. We had a mission. We were a generation, Stephen, with a mission. And that mission was to do what we could to make the Constitution and the Bill of Rights relevant for us, to include us. Since the Constitution, the 3/5 clause, Article 2, wrote us out as persons, right? We were non-persons.
You were property.
That's right, we were property.
Right.
And so this idea of that we're inferior simply because of the color of our skin has been a lifelong challenge and quest for me. And we all stand on such great shoulders that came before us.
Yeah, big, broad shoulders.
Yes,
right?
yes.
As you point out, you've been a civil rights attorney my entire life, and I'm not saying that in any sort of disparaging way, but in an honorific way.
Yes.
But talk about the work you did as a guest host here on the show and how that sort of dovetailed with what you were working on in the law.
We were very fortunate to have this forum because the mainstream media would not cover us. Occasionally, the Detroit Free Press would, but the mainstream media would not cover our issues and would not cover us. And so, you know, as we began to walk into areas as the first, there clearly was a reaction to us.
A pushback.
Huge.
Yes.
I can recall a case I had, and I think there was a sale of a Girl Scout camp, and they thought that Mayor Young was buying the camp. And there was a big meeting of the Girl Scouts out here in northern Oakland County where the Girl Scout camp was located. And they said, as far as we're concerned, you can put all the niggas in Detroit on Belle Isle and blow it up.
Wow.
I mean, that was what we ran into over and over and over, that idea that somehow we just were non-persons.
Yeah, yeah. assume that you are familiar with the show now.
Oh, yes.
As someone who hosted it in its early time, tell me what you think the significance of it is today, and maybe how different that is than when you were doing it.
In terms of, I was just thinking about it, as you were saying, that we had, it was a mission. I went on the air and privileged and happy to be there because I said, share the stories in the community, to share what was going on in the city, to have an opportunity, and whoever the general manager at that time, he needs to be given, you know, a hands up, because as you know, there was no other place, and for him to, or it was a him, for him to make that decision was a step beyond where we were in the 60s and 70s, and sometime in the 80s. There was no other place. Today, that is still on. The mission is still being carried out by the people such as yourself. And so it is significant today as it was then. Just as you said, he was talking about crack and cocaine. I didn't even know the words back then. I didn't even know there was such a thing back then. But we're talking about it today. So there is a need. It must stay, and it's necessary.
Yeah. Same question to you, Carl. As an attorney, as a former guest host of the show, why do we need this space now?
Tom Wicker, a famous columnist at the New York Times, years ago wrote a book called Tragic Failure. And it's an incredible, searing indictment of the promise of racial integration. This is 1996. And Tom Wicker said the promise of racial integration is dead. And so if he's right, and all of the evidence suggests that he is, then this forum is needed now more than ever, because how do we educate those young people? How do we tell them the issues that are going to affect them and their children? I'm a grandfather now, 20 grandchildren, 6 kids. And how do we get that information to them? It's like shows like this, so we can talk about the issues still, that when the mainstream media covers them, they're not going to cover them like you're going to cover them, Stephen, or like we covered them when we hosted here. They're just not.
It's different.
It's a different perspective. And it's not that the perspective is wrong, it's just different.
It's different.
That's all. And they got to recognize it's different. So, you know, the problems in Detroit, I was looking at the Time magazine article in 1961. Detroit was in major decline in 61.
In 61.
Yes, and you think about where was the vision of the leaders, the political and economic leaders at the time.
60 years later.
Here we are. Here we are.
Well, I appreciate both of you being here, but I even appreciate more all that you did to make it possible for me to sit here every week.
And it must continue.
Yeah, thank you both.
Struggle continues. Thank you, Stephen.
Pleasure.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Up next, Detroit residents get a chance to tell their own stories about their community. We will be right back.
As American Black Journal looks ahead at the next 50 years, we want to hear from you, the viewers. Tell us what you think of this program and what you'd like to see on future episodes. Visit AmericanBlackJournal.org to take a quick survey and share your opinion. Thank you.
Michigan Radio and the Detroit Journalism Cooperative have launched an exciting project in a neighborhood on Detroit's east side. Residents are recording their own news stories about the community in a podcast called Morningside 48224. Here's a brief tour of the area, courtesy of Monique Tate and Imani Mixon.
We are in the Morningside community, which is on the east side of Detroit, and it's in the northeast area. Our community is about 2 miles long by 1 mile wide. Our borders on our west are Alta Road, on our south, Mac, north, I-94, and east is Outer Drive.
I feel like people are like fuzzy on what the boundaries are. You know, it depends on who you talk to and when they were here.
The community has about 5,500 homes and was considered pretty much of a middle class and maybe some lower or moderate incomes. But we were significantly hit and impacted, of course, by the 2009 recession, just as many were. So we went through a significant amount of abandonment. Right now, we probably are closer to having about 4,000 occupied properties as opposed to the 5,500 or so that are here. You can see, even though some of these are neglected, they still have great bones to them, and they can be renovated and restored to be magnificently beautiful properties.
For sure.
We're traveling right now on Outer Drive. What we're approaching are both the area where we have our community-based meetings, because we have a very strong community organization in Morningside that just celebrated its 40th anniversary, actually. To our left is Bethany Lutheran School. It's not functioning as much as a school, but it's a fabulous church. They're very open, very community-oriented and supported. To our right is the Ronald Brown Academy. Now, this is the original building. We are quite fortunate because, as you can see, the brick change. It's the new structure. It was K-5, but it just transitioned to K-8 this year. We are very fortunate with Detroit having over 100 school closings. We retained both of our K-8 schools. The schools are the key to the sustainability of these areas. This to our left is the other K-8, Clark Academy. Did not get a renovation, but I'll say that they have power in their administration. As you can see, we have a bunch of wonderful and eclectic homes where the predominance of them are brick. Some of them have really large lots in the backyards. Thank God we're in the return and upswing. Not only are we increasing occupancy, it's considered the neighborhood to be in or to come to.
I think I can think of another neighborhood that has this many different kind of houses.
I know, very eclectic, right?
Yeah.
These fantastic, beautiful homes that we have are a plus, but what's an additional plus is that our neighborhood is also very comprehensive. We have the Jefferson Branch Library here, which is wonderful. It sponsors a lot of great community projects, and that's how we're restoring East Warren project. Before I get on that, we're right here in front of the historic Alger. They're also a fabulous community partner. This area to the right of us, this is being restored by the Alger Theater. The Friends of the Alger Theater have completed like any kind of asbestos removal and all of that, and they have completed the seating, the stage, but they are still a ways to go, but they're really diligent at working on it, and they're going to be opening a rooftop space this summer. I've just arrived at MAC. To the right, of course, is our Grosse Pointe border, and left is everything Morningside.
Yeah, MAC is a big deal. I feel like East Warren is also a big deal, but MAC is something else.
MAC is engaged in a corridor improvement project as well. You see new businesses popping up all the time. This is one of the new businesses, the Paradise Cafe, and then this is the Sweet Shop.
We covered a whole lot, and you work on a whole lot, so I just wonder, is there one thing that you're most excited about?
And I guess I'm excited about new residents. We now have very viable and walkable spaces and places, and just looking forward to more people coming over to the east side and getting homes in the Morningside area, so keep that part.
Y'all make me want to buy a home. One day soon, hopefully.
Joining me now is journalist Imani Mixon, who is heading up the podcast project. Welcome to American Black Journal.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So in the last segment, we were just talking about the importance of being able to tell your own story and how this show was part of sort of the debut of that here on broadcast television in Detroit. This is sort of the same idea, right? Things are changing in Detroit. We read a lot about what that change looks like to people who don't live through it.
Right.
This is a way to give those folks a chance to say, here's how it looks every day from my vantage point.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting to think about it almost as a lineage thing, right? Like this is not new work. People have always had stories to tell, always been living a very honest and true life, and this is just one way to document what's happening. So that's been really fun.
Yeah. So tell me a little about Morningside, which is an area that I know about because I grew up here in the city, but I don't think a lot of people even know necessarily where that is.
Exactly. So even Morningsiders themselves don't call it Morningside.
Don't call it Morningside necessarily.
They call it the East Side. They call it by intersection. They call it by landmark.
High school.
That's exactly high school affiliation, whatever. So that's been really interesting. But I grew up in the neighborhood and kind of understood it as Morningside when I was growing up. So it's on Detroit's very far east side, right near Grosse Pointe, and like kitty corner to a lot of other very important neighborhoods like East English Village and Cornerstone and things like that. But it's, it's not downtown, it's not midtown, so life is different and the amenities are different, and it's a place that has always been a celebrated and established neighborhood, and now people are sort of pushing their futures into being there.
That change narrative that we hear and fight about sometimes in Detroit, and I think it's actually a healthy fight to have, right? Change for whom, for the benefit of whom. Talk about change that's taking place in Morningside as seen from people who live there.
For sure. I think the more surrounding areas get love and attention, you sort of think about your own neighborhood in that context and wonder what it would look like if you were given that much time and attention, right? So people really have sort of the very basic needs of like a home, safety, a school, but then there's also this imagination of like, okay, what if we had a business district again?
Right.
And you know, what if I had a grocery store or multiple grocery stores to choose from and didn't have to cross MAC to find it?
Right.
So it's been really interesting to talk to people who have the resources to make the changes happen, and then talk to people who are living within this change. But my hope is always that the people who have been there can shape what happens to them.
So what are you hearing from them as you're giving them the opportunity to tell those stories? How do they feel they're included or not included?
I think people are very committed to being there, so it's not like this is day one in Morningside. It's like we've been here for generations.
And
we're
I'm not going
years
anywhere.
Deep. Right. So these are the things that I know y'all have tried to do that haven't worked. I think, you know, school, safety, like just open places for people to exist, like parks and even farms, are always on their mind. And I think they're a little more civically minded than other neighborhoods who already have those things. So they are bringing people to task, showing up to community meetings, or, you know, kind of taking it in their own hand, making a pocket park on the corner. But I think there is still hope, because so many things are happening that it's like we have to get, you know, something has to come this way, or we can make something happen here.
So one of the things I'm really involved in is a project around the home where my family lived when I was born, on Tuxedo near Livernois and Grand River. West Side.
Okay, that's all right.
I grew up on the east side, but I was born on the west side. It's a big deal here, right? One of the things that I struggle with in that project is the sadness that you get from thinking of what you remember, what you grew up with, and what's there now, and trying to reconcile that against the need to say we got to keep working. Things can get better. They will get better. I wonder if you feel some of that too in Morningside.
Definitely. I think, you know, as a Detroiter who went abroad and came back, or went away to school and came back, things are completely different. You miss, it seems like a whole century if you're gone for 5 years. So kind of knowing that that's a fact, and then realizing like, okay, these people, or that neighborhood is not my neighborhood. So given what we have and the time that we have and the resources we have, what's the best possible outcome, and how can we make that happen in little immediate bits? But I think, you know, a lot of people are talking about how Detroit is not being gentrified at the same rate or in the same way as other places, but if we've never experienced anything like this, if I'm used to only seeing 98% black people around me and now I don't, I'm going to feel something, I'm going to say something. So I think that the loss and the sadness can, you know, be turned into a functional and productive way of thinking how you want to fill that void. But yeah, it is definitely something that people bring up all the time.
What do the people of Morningside, what do their expectations look like? Not just for themselves, but for the rest of the city, for politicians. Do they have that belief that, yeah, things are going to get better still?
I'm not sure. I think that's a big ask. I think a lot of the conversations I end up in are around like permanence and stability, where, you know, you can't really always live from paycheck to paycheck, or from this house to this house, or this job to this job. So just that idea, that very basic American dream of like stability and sustainability comes up very often. And I see people that are working and thinking forward. Like in the same way you can build a nice, cute restaurant downtown one day and everybody's there next Sunday, that's not the same as life work, as family work, as community work.
It is such a different task. And it is so much longer term.
For sure. So it's nice to be welcomed into a community that is already community minded. Like nobody is being selfish. Nobody is shutting doors in my face, which can happen in journalism, but it's not happening yet. So they kind of already have everything they need in their mind, and now it's like materializing that and, you know, being able to vocalize that to the people who can make physical changes happen.
Can make the difference.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, congratulations on the work. Congratulations for going home to do the work. That really matters.
I'm excited to be here. It's a good time.
Okay, that's our program for today. Thanks for watching. You can get more information about our guests at AmericanBlackJournal.org. You can always connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. We'll see you next time.
American Black Journal is funded by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first.
How does diversity bring energy to us all? At DTE Energy, we believe that it's the contributions of all that build great communities. As a company, we grow stronger by welcoming the unique perspectives of everyone. As community members, we support our state's broad culture and heritage. From working closely with women and minority-owned suppliers to embracing our local cultures, DTE Energy is powering diversity. The DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public Television. Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Ford has a long history of honoring the achievements of great men and women. We also recognize that honoring means ensuring their legacies are carried forward. 2018 marks the 50th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination. To continue his legacy, Ford is partnering with the King Center and encouraging everyone to perform 50 acts of kindness. Between now and August 28, go to MLK54.org and register your act of kindness. Add Ford in the group name, as Ford will recognize select actions from our Southeast Michigan community. Perform your simple act of kindness, and together we'll carry forward Dr. King's dream of creating a beloved community.